Why do we click on the assignment? To create the assignment. Any activity, assignment, task, or item I create within the Blackboard system has its own settings and properties. Any item I create, whether it's an assignment, a test, or any other element, must have its own specific settings. I'm creating the assignment. Every assignment needs a name that appears to the student, like Unit 1 assignment. I'll write assignment 1 and add the date, May 22nd, to differentiate it. You should also write an appropriate name. Instructions are crucial as they guide the student on what's required. It's not just writing, there's a specific task. The assignment should be specific, like 10 pages, 300 lines, or 500 words, and mention the due date. You must write the name of the assignment here. We can write assignment 1. Also, I will highlight it with the date, May 22nd, to distinguish it as I have columns named assignment 1. Also, write the appropriate name for the assignment. Instructions are important as they guide the student on what is required. It's not just writing, there's a specific research task. The assignment should be specific, like 10 pages, 300 lines, or 500 words. Mention when it is due. When can the student work? A week, 10 days, or 2 weeks? This part of the instructions is essential. So it's not just about writing. I want to tell them that there's a specific research task, a specific assignment. What is this assignment about? I need this assignment to be, for example, 10 pages long, or I want it to be 300 lines, or I want it to be 500 words, and exactly about what. So you must also mention when it is due. When can the student work on the assignment? Is it within a week? You have a week student, you have 10 days, or you have 2 weeks. So this part of the instructions is essential. When can the student work on the assignment? Within a week, you have a week. Student, you have 10 days or you have 2 weeks. So this part of the instructions is essential. This is an important part. Of course, I'm not going to write the acknowledgements, but I want to clarify to you that the acknowledgements part is important for the student. So we've written the name, we've written the instructions. Now let's also see what's below. You'll find that there is something called assignment files. Here is the system too. It allows you to attach a file to help the student. You can browse and select the file. Click open and the student will have that file available to open. Notice the due date. Today is the 22nd and you can tell the student they can submit until the 27th. But you need the student to submit by the 25th. So you can say, I will give them 2 extra days until the 27th. You also notice that there is a due date. This due date means, very simply, when you read here what is written, it says that the student's assignments will be accepted. Of course, today is the 22nd. Today is the 22nd. I would like, for example, that you, for example, told him, by God, I will open it for you until the 27th, meaning today, for example, is the 22nd, and you will open it for the student who is allowed to send until the 27th, but you need the student to submit on the 25th to submit on the 25th. Okay, you will tell them, but I will add 2 days until the 27th, for example, meaning the 25th is the due date for assignment submission. If submitted on the 26th or 27th, it's okay. If submissions are open from the 22nd to the 27th, known as the submission window. If you prefer the 25th, submissions on this date get full credit. After the 25th, points may be deducted, like half or a quarter point based on the situation. The due date is recorded to mark late submissions. Late submissions are noted next to the student's name, indicating lateness. I may give a late student half the grade. That's the due date's role in the assignment. If I want the submission to be on the 25th, I might deduct points, like half or a quarter, depending on the situation. It's just a recorded date, marking late submissions. I can give late submissions half the grade. Set, for example, Saturday the 7th, as an example. After this date, the student will have a mark called late submission. This will appear next to the student's name, indicating that they submitted late. So I will know that this date distinguishes that any student who submits after this date will be considered late. I can then give the student who submitted late half the grade, for example. So that's the meaning of the due date in the assignment. So what's the benefit of this and what does it mean? You come here and set, for example, Saturday the 7th Just as an example, just to clarify, for instance, and it also specifies when, meaning on the 7th, you can submit until 11:59. After that, after 11:59 on the 7th, it will be marked as late. It will be late, but does late mean that it won't be submitted? No, it will still be submitted, but it will be considered late. Also, the assignment has points so when I do an assignment, I have to give points for this assignment, which is out of 2 points, and this assignment is out of 5 points, depending on the specific points for the assignment. I also have details about the submission. As I mentioned to you in previous sessions, the submission can be either individual or group, either individual or group. For individual submission, each of the 40 students must submit their assignment themselves, resulting in 40 files. As the instructor, I review each submission to grade it. This is the usual method. For group submission, instead of 40 individual submissions, I create 5 groups of 8 students each. One student from each group submits the assignment, reducing the number of submissions. And as course instructor, I must check each attempt to see this file and grade them. This is individual submission, and this is usually common. Now, for group submission, it works like this. If I have 40 students in the class or more, based on size, I don't want to have 40 attempts. I don't want each student to submit individually. Instead, I will create 5 groups. Each group will have 8 students, so I will have 5 groups, and each group will have 8 students. Therefore, from these 5 groups, one student from each of the 5 groups will submit for their group. So how many attempts or how many files will I have? I will have 5, one from each group. So I have 5 groups. So I have 40 students in the class or more, depending on the number, and I don't want to have 40 attempts. I don't want each student to submit individually. Instead, I will create 5 groups, and each group will have 8 students. So I will have 5 groups, and each group will have, for example, 8 students. Therefore, from these 5 groups, one student from each of the 5 groups will submit on behalf of their group. So how many attempts or how many files will I have? I will have 5, one from each group. So I have 5 groups, and from each group, one student will submit this file. I will have 5 attempts instead of having 40 attempts. I will just go in and grade these 5 attempts, and the grade I give to these 5 will be applied to all 40 students. One student from each of the 5 groups will submit on behalf of his group. He will submit the file. So how many attempts or how many files will I have? I will have 5 students from each group. I have 5 groups. From each group, a student will send this file. I will have 5 attempts. After I had 40 attempts, I will have 5 attempts. I will go in and correct only the 5 attempts, and the grade that I give to the 5 will be generalized to the 40. It will be generalized to the 40. So if I have a student in a group and I gave them 5 out of 6, then all the other members of the group will also get 5 out of 6. They will all get 5 out of 6. But of course, you all usually use individual submission. Now, the next part is about the number of attempts for the assignment. How many attempts do you usually give for the assignment? How many attempts does the student have? Usually, you all give 1 attempt. Usually, you all give 1 attempt. So 1 attempt is fine. There's no problem with that. Some might give 2 attempts. So, how do we set that? We can click on it and choose multiple attempts, and then after selecting multiple attempts, we write a maximum of 2. So now, what do we have? The student has 2 attempts to submit their assignment. If I'm correcting both attempts as the instructor, I go in to check both attempts and give a grade for each one. So, what do I do? Which result does the student get? Do I give them the result of the first attempt or the result of the second attempt? Now, it depends on you. What if the student submitted their first attempt and got a 5?